As astrologers, we attend to both conventional linear time and perhaps more importantly to cyclical or natural time. So I'd like to speak today on the dynamics of cyclical time, specifically the closing phase of any cycle of activity. In astrology, of course, we find cyclic meaning in the zodiac and in the houses, the lunation cycle, the planetary aspect cycles, just to name a few. And when the closing phase is identified as Pisces, the 12th house, or indirectly as Neptune, which is the agent of Pisces, it is the 12th dynamic that we're talking about. And I'm hoping to raise awareness and value of this dynamic today. Now, writing about the 12th dynamic or about Pisces or the 12th house or even Neptune is a little like trying to catch a fish with your hands. It's always a case of attempting to grasp the ungraspable. It may be best to look at this dynamic kind of over the shoulder or with a sideways glance or out of the corner of your eye in order to catch its subtle nuance. Today I want to amplify, I want to hint, I want to circle and drift a bit, hoping for a moving glimpse of understanding regarding this dynamic. And we'll be meandering about, dipping our toes in astrology, mythology, psychology, and philosophy. So it will be very widespread. Now, I had great difficulty constructing this presentation, kind of like building a sandcastle between incoming waves. I surveyed a number of writers, letting their words settle into my psychic stew, let them simmer slowly for a while, and let them ferment over time in hopes of providing you with a good tasting today of this dynamic that we're going to be talking about. Many astrologers, myself included, locate imagination in the 12th dynamic, and subsequent to this, story, myth, fantasy, fable, dream, symbol, mediumship, mystical experience, confusion, psychosis, the collective unconscious, fantasy, fiction, etc. I think you see where I'm going. The 12th dynamic, as hopefully you will come to understand it today, is the key to understanding the depth of meaning associated with these factors. Now, before we discuss this closing phase of the astrological cycles, the 12th dynamic, let's look at the context within which the 12th occurs, because it is context that gives everything meaning. So I believe it's helpful to discuss the patterns of change in any cyclic process. This image has been adapted from Rudyard's person-centered astrology. And as you can see, it suggests that we perceive regularity in patterns of change in our lives. And what I want to draw attention to you to draw your attention to is that anything that emerges into existence is an ongoing process or event. At the very least, we fantasize a beginning, a middle, and an end. So there is momentum toward unique particularity. As you can see here, I think my cursor is showing on screen. The birth of something here, which if we were talking about zodiacal process, we'd be talking about Aries. And as it comes into being, is born, it differentiates, it concretizes, it comes to establish itself. And that first quarter cycle is focused upon concretizing or making concrete whatever it is that was born. And then the second half of that first hemicycle is for the expression of that. So for instance, the extreme momentum toward differentiation in its extreme form, we would have Virgo. And then of course, it reorients itself to the last 6 zodiacal signs, which are movement toward collectivization or communion. And in the same process, you have the first quarter cycle concretizing and the last quarter cycle expressing the collectivization or the undifferentiation, finally ending up in Pisces, which is the most extreme expression of non-differentiation. So we're going from individualizing process to its peak and then de-individualizing process for the rest of the cycle until it comes again around to a rebirth of something new differentiating itself out. Now, this applies whether you're using a seasonal cycle, 4-phase, or an 8-phase cycle as in the lunation cycle, or 12-phase cycle as in the zodiac, or in the houses when you look at these as a developmental process. So whatever it is that is born that Aries describes initiates a process moving to pull away from its uterine matrix, and then establishing and expressing individuality through the process of increasing differentiation and complexity. So Aries applies obviously to more than just you and I. It applies to everything that comes into being, that is born. Now, the 12th dynamic, of course, is a transpersonal principle, something which is beyond our ability to control, beyond personal need, and something that reflects our submission to the way of the world. It allows us to experience the interconnectedness of the world. The 12th dynamic is echoed by, for instance, 19th century poet Francis Thompson, where he wrote, "Thou canst not stir a flower without troubling of a star." Or the American naturalist John Muir, who said, "When we try to pick out anything by itself, we find it hitched to everything else in the universe." Or to bring it more up to date with chaos theory, I'm assuming some of you have heard of the butterfly effect. And that is, if a butterfly had not flapped its wings at a certain moment and place in China, the tornado in Kansas would not have occurred. So to put it more simply, a very small change in the initial conditions of something creates a significantly different outcome. One of the examples I like to use is that if you've ever paddled a canoe or a kayak and you've started from one shoreline trying to get across to the other side of the lake, if you start to go off course with your first few paddles and you don't course correct, then when you get to the other side of the lake, you will have widely missed your target goal. And this was some of the philosophy behind the COVID-19 outbreak in some of the states that decided early intervention is best in order to contain and flatten out the spread of the virus. Or additionally, something we do with children. You try to have early behavioral interventions with children in order that you can stop them headed down the road for problematic behaviors. Now, the 12th dynamic also provides us with indirect glimpses of paradise, something seen in the mist or the fog. And here we are able to make out the vague landscape of imagination, the night world of the unconscious, where images, stories, and memories arise, rather than the foreground of our orderly day world experience. Now, why is it important to know this? Who the heck cares? And I would say because it gives us a contextual understanding of the 12th sign and house and even Neptune and how we imagine their significance in our lives. As the ending phase of this process, it is the cosmic compost to which everything returns and out of which everything emerges. The dustbin of the Zodiac is what Isabel Hickey called Pisces, the pre-cosmic chaos, the womb out of which worlds are born, and yet as the new cycle is birthed, we feel the pull of oceanic tides, a desire for a return to the bliss of the womb. We experience a nostalgia for paradise, and we are lured by the seductive song of the sirens, promising ecstasy, a yearning for homecoming, a reversion back to beginnings or origins. Additionally, we have fantasies, both culturally and individually. The point is that coming or going in life, imagistically, we find paradise at our beginning and at our ending.